I'm delighted to welcome you to our home. As Sarah mentioned, I'm the Dean of the Sanford School of Public Policy. We have a remarkable group of people assembled here for a meeting that we're having tomorrow on world food policy issues and the planning of a World Food Policy Center, but also tonight for this broader public event. And we are so fortunate to have the three people in this panel who've agreed to join us. A remarkable group of individuals, all quite with different backgrounds and experiences, but all passionate about the pressing world food problems that we face today, and all with wonderful ideas about solutions. So I think we're going to have a great event. Furthest from me is Shenggen Fan, who has been the Director General of the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, since 2009. And as many of you know, IFPRI is a world-class organization leading the world in doing work on agriculture and food systems issues, publishing very influential reports and being thought leaders. He serves as well as the Vice Chairman of the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Food and Nutrition Security after serving as Chairman of the Council from 2012 to 2014. In 2014, Dr. Fan received the Hunger Hero Award from the World Food Program in recognition of his commitment to and leadership in fighting hunger worldwide. Dr. Fan received his PhD in Applied Economics from the University of Minnesota and bachelor's and master's degree from Nanjing Agricultural University in China. Immediately to my right is Betsy Holden, who serves as senior advisor to McKinsey & Company, working with clients across industries on strategy, marketing, innovation, and board effectiveness initiatives. Betsy was formerly co-CEO of Kraft Foods and CEO of Kraft Foods North America. Betsy introduced new products that generated over $2 billion in revenue, and under her leadership, Kraft received numerous marketing and new product awards. She has led key industry initiatives in food safety and in health and wellness, and as a CEO at Kraft, made some major advances and really was out front on a number of these issues. Betsy serves on a number of boards, including those for Time Inc. and Western Union. She did her undergraduate work here at Duke University, graduating summa cum laude, and holds a master's degree in marketing and finance from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. She is also a member of the Duke Board of Trustees. Jürgen Vogela was, in the middle here, was appointed Senior Director of the World Bank's Agriculture Global Practice in 2014. Prior, he was the Director of the World Bank's Agriculture and Environmental Services Department. In this role, he provided leadership on the bank's activities across sustainable landscapes and oceanscapes, agriculture and environmental economic policy, and risk management in markets. Since joining the World Bank in 1991, Dr. Vogela has held a number of assignments chairing the Agricultural and Rural Development Sector Board, as well as the Environment Sector Board, leading the Agriculture Unit in China and the Agriculture and Rural Development Unit of Europe and Central Asia region. He holds degrees in agricultural engineering, in crop production, and in economics and extension forestry, and earned a PhD in agriculture economics. So let's start getting to solutions. I'd like to ask you to complete a sentence, and it would be this: if we are to feed the population of the world and to do so in a sustainable way, what do we need to start doing? So Betsy, I'll begin with you.
Number one is we've got to reduce the food waste. But can I give a positive story?
Of
so
course.
In Africa, right now, the food companies, and I'm on the Diageo board, some of the beverage companies who are doing either malted beers or doing non-alcoholic beverages are working with the farmers, working with the governments in those countries to create the value chain, so to help the farmers fund their agriculture so there's financing available, and then they're investing to build the supply chains from the farms through to the factories or through to the retail outlets. And so at least as a starting point in Africa, and jump in, I think there's some promising things that are happening where, because of some of the conversations that we're talking about, because of people being aware of, and I think one of the things I work with McKinsey now, I think one of the things they've done well is they've done a lot of work in Africa, and they said people keep solving slivers, but until we solve the supply chain, we're not going to really break through. So what I'm saying is I think there's an opportunity with public and private partnerships. So if we're going to solve it, we're going to have very interesting partnerships that work in different ways that help to invest to solve these problems more end to end. So I'm giving a hopeful note there that, yes, it's a dramatic problem, but we've got to get these coalitions together and start working across. And I'm seeing encouragement in the things that I'm seeing, some buds, some seeds that are taking place. The food and beverage industry has also gotten together into a sustained agricultural initiative platform where they're also pooling so that they can work in different countries collaboratively, non-competitively to help build these infrastructures. So I'm starting to see some seeds of partnerships that give me some hope.
Jürgen, what would you say in answer in response to that question?
It's a big question how to solve all the problems of the world. So let me start. We need a food system that is much more climate smart. We've talked about this before. We need high productivity because if we don't increase productivity, we can't solve the climate problem. Just extensive agriculture will absolutely mean larger areas will have to be used for production, which means fewer trees on the planet. It's a simple equation. But intensification has to be done in a real sustainable way. And I don't want to repeat bad news, but it is a reality. And I think the reason I'm being pretty stark in my description of what's wrong is because people don't feel urgency in my sector. They don't feel it's urgent. It's not Ebola. It's not migration in the Turkish border. It's not, the kinds of things that get people out of their seats. Yeah. But it is even, in my view, even more dangerous and even more urgent to deal with it today than many of the things that we are seeing today, because they are partly the reason for why we're seeing these migration trends and other things. We need a system that's highly productive on a sustainable basis. Not easy to do, and we are far away from it. I mentioned the footprint. We have huge over-fertilization rates. We use Stone Age technology to produce our food. With that, I mean, I'm German, right? So Germany invented in 1906 what's called urea, the nitrogen fertilizer that all farmers around the world use. It's Haber-Bosch synthesis. They created urea. That's still the same technology we are using today, 120 years later. Can you give me another industry that does that? 60% of that urea never reaches a plant root. It goes up in the air and goes down in the groundwater and pollutes the environment to an extent that is unbelievable. No other sector would get away with this. So we need innovation, we need research, we need technology to get us from where we are today to where we need to be in 20 years from now. So you ask me what needs to be done, a lot more investment in agricultural research, because we are happy to just invest a couple of billion around the planet, publicly, for public goods research, which is what I'm talking about right now. Then you have Monsanto, Syngenta, DuPont, they invest a couple of billion more. But when you take it together, it's no more than a few $1 billion per year that goes into our future of our profoundly unsustainable currently food system. When you compare that to energy, you know how much money gets invested in alternative energy around the globe every year to get us where we are today, with windmills and solar panels that are commercially available at reasonable prices? About 180 to 200 billion per year gets invested in this technology transformation. In agriculture, which is actually a bigger problem, we invest a tiny fraction of that. So that is very important. Agriculture research, CGIAR, others who are at the heart of this, we are scrambling to fund the CGIAR to just keep ourselves above water with another 2% productivity increase every year. And we're happy with that, and we shouldn't be. We should completely and profoundly change that. Right? To me, this is absolutely essential. Then the question is, where's the money going to come from? So what's the answer to that? Agriculture has actually a lot of public money in it. And I'm talking about subsidies that governments around the world give to invest in their farming community. You can call it all sorts of different things, but it's an investment in the farming community. It's done for different reasons, some political, some environmental, some for other reasons. And can I ask you one more time, what is the total global subsidy bill that governments give to the farmers around the world? Anyone have any idea how much money is being spent? You probably heard of the farm bill in the US is around 20 billion, I think, roughly about 20 to 30, depending on whether you put the insurance in and stuff. Any idea how much money globally is spent on agricultural subsidies? It's about $500 billion per year. It's $500 billion per year. So it's not a sector that doesn't have money. It's a sector that doesn't spend its money wisely. It gives the farmers for inefficient subsidies and inputs and fertilizers in groundwater mining, subsidizes energy so farmers can pump even more groundwater out of this as if there is no tomorrow. It is done in a very wasteful and inefficient way. So our job, and this is why the Policy Institute is so hugely important, is to make the case to these countries why it is critically important to use that scarce resource for something that gets you a return on this investment. We are at the World Bank, we used to argue 20 years ago, and the World Bank's changing too. We used to argue get rid of subsidies. Subsidies are inefficient and bad. Not what we're saying today. What we're saying today is change your subsidies into intelligent investments. Invest this money in agriculture. Invest it with your farmers. But make sure that they use climate-smart technology. Make sure that they don't draw the groundwater. Give them the technology that creates biogas that's has a lower footprint. Invest it in local research. Do the kind of public goods infrastructure that will change the way we produce our food. It is in our hands as current and future policymakers to move the world towards that. I'm not out there asking for more money, which is often what's happening. We don't need more money. We need to use it differently.
Hey, Schengen, how would you respond?
Yeah, I think 3 points or 3 opportunities. The number one is very much related to what Jürgen said. We must invest more in research, in generating new technologies. But here I wanted to emphasize these newer technologies must have multiple wins. The Green Revolution technologies usually only have one win, that is high yielding, right? But today's new technology must win in yield. Yes, we must produce more, you said more efficient. We must improve nutrition. So can the new technology improve the nutrition of different crops? The third win is deal with the stresses from the climate change. Yeah, drought, floods, heat, diseases. So we have to have multiple wins, maybe even 3 or 4 wins. And the CGIAR have some technology like that. There is a rice called a C4 rice. And I learned a lot from our scientists, our colleagues from other CGIAR centers. They explained to me why this rice is very different. It's a crazy rice because it has 4 carbons instead of 3. When a crop has 4 carbons, it's more efficient in using water, more efficient in using sonar, more efficient in using energy, and also more efficient in using fertilizers. Several wins already there. But nutrition is another win that still yet to be added to that rice. But here at IPRI, it's a policy institute, but we also do some breeding work. So we do some breeding to add micronutrients, vitamin A, zinc, and iron into different crops. Rice, wheat, maize, sorghum, millet, all these different crops, the same crops, but you can add a nutrition. So in the future, technologies must have all these wins. And this you should not compromise some other let's say, characteristics. So that's number one. Number two, the innovation is not just the innovation in technologies, innovation also in policy. That's very much related to what we're talking about here. So Jürgen mentioned about subsidy. We know subsidy is bad. We know that for 30 years. But when I talk to the Indian and Chinese, by the way, the Chinese and Indians now, they really increased the subsidies. So 20% of their agriculture value is from subsidies, compared to some OECD countries, they have already begun to move the subsidies away. So why it's difficult? Because politicians tell the farmers, oh, you gain from subsidies. But from our study, actually farmers don't gain from subsidies. They actually lose. So the 20% subsidies, let's say India and China, they do not produce nutritious food. Why? Because these subsidies are linked to rice, wheat, and maize, not more nutritious foods like beans, vegetables, fruits, or dairy products. They are not sustainable because water is free, electricity is free, fertilizer is subsidized. They overuse it. And obviously, it's not economically efficient. They use so much money. They don't have a good return. Right? But the question is, how are we going to change that? At IPRI, we did a study, experiment. So you can do experiment in technology, in natural science. You could also do experiment in policy. So that's another new areas we should really embrace. You can do experiment. What do? We calculate the subsidies we give to each farmer. Then we, instead of give them subsidy, we give them money. Instead of giving them subsidized fertilizer, free water, free electricity, we convert all this to money. But farmers have to pay the inputs at the market price. You know what happens? The farmers will optimize the use of these inputs. Water will be saved, energy will be saved. The whole society will benefit from that. And even more important, what do we do with all this saved money? Yes, invest that money in infrastructure. And more importantly, to invest in more nutritious crops. I think we have one of the experts here, Corina. They have worked on this issue for a long time. How can we really design certain so-called nutrition-driven value chains? So that's the policy innovation. So I think as a new institute, I think you are probably new kids on the block. IPRI probably is one of the oldest one in this area. And your name is very similar to ours. International, yours is World, policy is all there. Ours is Institute, Center. But we have something in common. That is, we must innovate in policy. Now, my last point is partnership. There are lots of interesting partnerships. One partnership, I think Betsy may have mentioned, is Grow Africa initiative, initiated by the World Economic Forum. You are talking about 200 multinational companies come together to work with African Union, to work with the national governments. So, but it's a country-owned program, but with private sector there. So for the last 4 or 5 years, $1.8 billion have been invested by this private sector company. And 8.7 million smallholder farmers have benefited from that investment. So partnership, farmers, governments, the private sector companies, research organizations like us, so we provide neutral independent evaluation whether they have really achieved the targets, whether everybody benefited from that. I'll stop here.
So the problems that you're describing will defy simple solutions, will defy incremental changes, and really require profound differences in thinking, profound differences in practices. That will require countries around the world understanding that these are very important problems and getting to work on them, and doing so very quickly, because we're talking about world water shortages that could reach some crisis tipping point within 15, 20, or 30 years, world population doubling in the next 50 years. These are all things that are right around the corner, and if we wait until those tipping points get reached, it might very well be too late. So do you believe that the right people around the world are getting it, understanding the severity of these problems and getting to work on them? Shingen, I'll begin with you.
Well, I think the good news is, yes, some of the challenges have already begun to be understood by many, but we must do more. How can we really make sure that different stakeholders also accountable to what they do? Yogan and I discussed some of the so-called Global Food System Index 2 years ago, again on the World Economic Forum. So we know that we must reshape our food system. I mean, our current food system is not sustainable, does not produce nutritious food, it's not inclusive, not economically efficient. We must reshape it. How do we do this? So we are thinking to create a food system index. You have seen our global nutrition report, right? Or our global hunger index. That index is very powerful. Do not underestimate that. So you can rank the country where they are in terms of the food system, good or bad. Maybe Switzerland is maybe number 1, or I don't know. I know we have some guest who is working on the Swiss food system. If you rank the countries based on the performance of 6 indicators, right?
That's right.
Climate resilience, sustainability, nutrition, inclusiveness. Women, youth, and smallholders must benefit from that. Poor people have to benefit from that. So all these 6 dimensions. So we can create an index that has these 6 dimensions to make sure that the government knows, okay, where is your problem? You said, well, where do we start or where do we work? So with all this index, we can see which country has performed well in one dimension, but performed not so well in another dimension. And in my experience with that index is in India, we even created a state-level index, hunger index. then different states begin to argue why you are doing better than me. Is it a data problem? Is it because we have messed up with our policy? So it's quite interesting from initial denial to sit down to look at the issues, problems, to move to action.